Two former U.S. presidents join us right here on Inside Story. Good morning, everyone. I'm Matt O'Donnell. It is Sunday, June 7, 2026. Welcome to Inside Story. Real treat for you here. Now, usually we have a little setup with the show. When you have two founding fathers in the studio, no setup needed. Introducing John Adams, second president of the United States, first vice president of the United States, co-drafter of the Declaration of Independence, and a staunch opponent of the British Parliament Stamp Act, a school teacher, lawyer, and the first presidential resident of the White House. Yes. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Adams.
It is my pleasure.
Also, Thomas Jefferson, third president of the United States, second vice president of the United States, primary author of the Declaration of Independence, the man behind the Louisiana Purchase, writer, philosopher, mathematician, multilinguist, lawyer, architect, and altogether Renaissance man.
Very kind of you, sir.
Thank you. And also a great wine collection.
I was afraid you were going to leave that out. Quite proud of that one.
It's great to see both of you. First question, what do you think of this 2026 thing?
I find it a bit confusing. You seem to have a lot more horses, but you hide them away and they move a lot faster.
Okay.
Everyone gets around very, very quickly with their horses and the power of them until they suddenly don't get anywhere.
Mr. Adams, any thoughts?
I will simply say that, well, we had a point where we had a flying machine where you could travel from Philadelphia to New York in 2 days. I think things have gotten slower.
Well,
since then,
we've been trying to modernize that.
Yeah, all right, well.
We're working on batteries and stuff with that. So let me go back to 1776. You're working on the Declaration of Independence. Any thoughts in your heads back then as to how long you thought this great experiment America would last?
It is rather humorous you should ask that. Mr. Adams and I disagreed about the nature of the Constitution that was eventually established. I thought we should have a new constitutional convention every 20 years or so.
Yes, and I simply believe that we should build upon the foundations that we began with the Constitution and continue forward. I will say that I was gratified for this continuation, and I knew it would take several generations before people would build upon what we began and continue them into a good, hopefully longer lasting independence.
Looks like you won on that one, right? So it's 1-0.
I did not realize we were in contesting with each other.
By the way, if I start speaking in a British accent, I'm blaming you, one of you two.
Well, I hope it is somewhat of a combination of British, but also some Southern, and ultimately truly American.
Well, you're a Virginian.
Yes. I am a Virginian.
Yeah. And my English is new, as I'm a New Englander.
Why did you think America could work?
We had already seen tests, if you will, experiments done in government by the people on a large scale. Now, this is going back now over a millennia to ancient Greece, the Roman Republic, the Athenian democracy. We thought that, and I think we're right about this, that we improved upon their models, most importantly, by rooting the basic concept of the people, not just in one generation or in one rank in society, but in every generation being the equals of those who have come before, thus, I think, ensuring continuity.
Thoughtful, as I would have predicted from you.
Yes.
How about your thoughts on that?
It has always been my hope that things would progress from where we began. It was imperfect, certainly, and there were times when I did fear that our efforts would have been in vain, as there was a great deal of talk for reconciliation throughout the First Continental Congress and into the Second, but it was once we began seeing the influence of Mr. Paine's common sense and more people began to speak and think of independence, the idea of it certainly had a greater hold, and surprisingly enough, it did one of the most miraculous things I think ever. It caused Congress to do things, which was scarcely anything we had accomplished before.
Remember that phrase, by the way, Congress doing things. Both of you are sitting on opposite sides of the table. Just as a precaution, you were involved in the nation's first contested election of 1796, which you won, becoming the second president. Did you ever mend fences after that? Because I know that you were kind of upset about things, even though you served as vice president.
Well, it got worse before it got better.
Oh, indeed. Well, politics can do that.
When Mr. Adams won, he was elected president, but I was then, as a result, elected vice president.
Because, yes.
The way the Constitution worked at the time, one of the second most votes with a majority.
You stayed in the
became
Naval
vice president.
Observatory.
So,
no, you didn't.
do not wish to engage in
Was
any
it a
naval
boring
observing
job?
today.
Everyone says it's really boring being.
I said that the second office of the land was honorable and easy.
Yeah.
But the first, the presidency, is just a splendid misery.
Yes, and I fear that the presidency, the vice presidency, I found myself very much on the outside of the doors where things were happening more than inside. Mr. Washington did not always take my counsel, and I fear that our differences of opinion caused things to be more divided between us, at least in politics. But years later, a good colleague of ours, Dr. Benjamin Rush, tried to encourage us to begin our friendship anew, but I had told him where there had been no war, there could be no room for negotiations for peace, which is to say, our friendship had not ended. It was simply put on a bit of a respite because of the joy of politics.
And it was Mr. Adams who broke the silence. And Mr. Adams is very good at breaking silence.
Well, that is true. I am a New Englander. If
Well,
I am asked a question, I will answer it, as opposed to...
Even if you're not asked a question, you'll answer it.
as opposed to Virginians who will simply listen quietly and talk about you after you leave.
And he wrote me a letter on New Year's Day, 1812. What followed were 14 years of scores and scores of letters between us. We wrote on everything.
I wish
yes.
people would write letters nowadays, but they don't do that.
Why?
Well, I will say that Mr. Jefferson wrote one letter to every 4 of mine, although one of his was worth 4 of mine. But no, I will say that we did discuss many things. I did think we ought not die before we had explained ourselves to one another.
We discussed the classics. We
Yes.
discussed farming and the mixtures of manure.
History, oh yes.
We discussed history.
Exciting topics.
We discussed politics. Oh, I already said we discussed
Manure, yes. It is
Are you
insane,
upset
yes.
that there weren't any really cool cheesesteak shops in Philadelphia back in those days?
The culinary opportunities in Philadelphia and our day perhaps differed
Yes.
from your day. I've heard rumors of this, a combination of cheese and steak that you haven't. It does not sound to
Provolone,
me.
usually.
It does not sound to me entirely healthful. I ate mostly vegetables. I ate meat only as a condiment, with the vegetables and grains as the element. So I don't know if I would have found it.
Yes. I always found that a good, hearty New England boiled dinner was lovely. Some meat, but again, potatoes and vegetables simply held over the fire for hours upon end. It was quite lovely. Some of the many meals that we had in celebration of us having a Continental Congress were filled with sweets and fancy soups and things that I did not think were necessary. I certainly preferred the simple things.
I'm a meat and potatoes guy myself. So
Splendid.
I can totally see on that. Do you have any? You have this sort of wide view of our nation right now, and you meet people. Do you have any advice for our nation in 2026?
I am finding that my message that I am delivering to Americans, based on the Declaration of Independence, is something that Americans across your own political divides, of which I know very little, but I know they existed in our day, is a message that Americans across the political spectrum are receiving positively. The basic idea of my message is that all men are created equal, means all mankind, so ladies, you too, and that it applies to all generations. People are receiving that. It's just when they get together in a room and they differ with each other, they decide to argue with each other about something that, when they talk to me, they seem to agree on it.
Well, now the score is 1-1, by the way. That was really good. What do you have?
He has a very good way of speaking, and since he never spoke more than 3 sentences an entire time in Congress, he had plenty of time to work on improvement.
I did.
I will say that the best thing that I wish to remember is our imperfections. We were a collection of, well, many lawyers, but also a physician and a pastorate and shoemakers and many who were inexperienced, and we were attempting to do the best we could with what we had. I will say that certainly we were filled in rooms with great men, and many times those great men had to prove their greatness at every turn. I had often said that if there was a motion on the floor of Congress that 2 and 2 equal 4, we should still be subject to days of deliberations on politics and history and mathematics, and only after everyone had chosen and shown their greatness, then they might vote unanimously in the affirmative. But I do believe that despite imperfections, compromises were reached, common ground was found, and thusly we were able to progress forward in ways that we might not have had we remained separate in separate colonies, becoming separate states, becoming separate countries.
That's some good stuff there. We have one final question. Time for one. Louisiana Purchase, too big, too small, or just right?
Well, ultimately, we're going to expand with with our concept of an empire of liberty throughout the earth. The flame of liberty will spread and will defeat the engines of despotism wherever they may be. So the Louisiana Treaty, that is a start.
It's a purchase.
Now, I have a question for you,
Sure.
Mr. O'Donnell. What do you call the lump in my good colleague's throat?
I'm afraid to answer. I beg indifference? Ignorance?
You call it the Adam's apple.
Well,
Was that a dad joke?
That was a founding dad joke.
I fear that was a very long walk upon a very short pier, Mr. Jefferson. Yes, I will simply say that the Louisiana purchase, after all, there was land and there was money exchanged for it. It was a very good idea eventually, although it might have been good to ask for permission before forgiveness.
Very well.
I'll let you think about that.
Mr. President.
Mr. O'Donnell, thank you.
So
sir.
nice to have you in Inside Story, Mr. President.
Mr. O'Donnell, pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
We'll be back with our panel, and we'll be right back. I mean, how do you top that? Well, you bring in people from the modern era, and we're going to do that right now with A.J. Raju, chairman of Raju LLP.
Good morning.
Not a founding father,
No.
but a father.
Yes.
Very important. Yeah. Allison Young, managing partner of RWB Strategies and the coolest mom in all the land.
That's right, Matt. Thank you.
Of course, yeah.
All right.
Rich Negrin, the former Pennsylvania Environmental Protection Secretary, father as well, not founding
And
father.
a grandfather.
Your grandfather, yes. Godfather as well, maybe?
Maybe.
I'm a godfather, yeah. And Jeff Gibalera, strategic communications expert, a father as well.
But AJ and Rich don't have as nice a hair as
That's right. No
Tom
powdered
and
wigs
Sure.
today,
Nor,
Jeff.
nor are we cool, apparently.
Right.
That's
Or the cool
right.
mom.
Well, you guys are you fight with yourselves on that one, all right? What would the founding fathers think of our country today?
I think they would be proud because you had Jefferson, who had soaring ideals, you know, the dream, all men created equal. Of course, while he was saying that, he could also see the nightmare, which are enslaved people. Then you have the wiring and the plumbing on the other side, which is separation of powers, and others, which was Adams. The combination of it is what makes America. The Declaration was not a certificate of achievement. It was much more of a promissory note, which future generations will make due on. And from that standpoint, it's a living thing. So they would be very proud that we still have philosophical differences. We still have this experiment, the pursuit of greatness, which is what they were hoping for.
I mean, they envisioned this bold experiment in self-government, right? So I think that they would be proud of that. 330 million citizens, global superpower. Like, there are things to be proud of and things that have endured. However, I think they would warn against some of the factionalism that we're seeing right now. In fact, they did warn us about it. They were prescient. They weren't paranoid.
Sure.
You know, and so I think that that's probably where I think some of them are rolling over right now, is saying, hey, we warned you about this, and right now what we're doing is just amplifying some of those divides, whether it's through technology or we have more hashtags than muskets, but it's still we're bordering on danger right now, and I think that that's probably the thing they'd warn about.
You know, Matt, I think I find great inspiration in our founding fathers. You could see these two gentlemen did a good job kind of acting it out. We didn't always get along. In 1798, we were in a quasi-war with France right after the Revolution. We're in a quasi-war right now. And specifically, John Adams, the guy who was sitting right over there a few minutes ago, passed the Alien and Sedition Acts. It's the most un-American law ever passed. It was overturned years later. And it attacked the media, said you couldn't criticize the government, said specifically it was harder to vote, and it targeted immigrants who were in the opposing political party.
Sound familiar?
Sound familiar?
Yes.
So the good news is that's where you draw your inspiration from. 2 years later, the backlash was so strong. They actually locked up 2 newspaper editors under that law for criticizing the president. 2 years later, those guys were all voted out of office, and the guy who was sitting here, Thomas Jefferson, won, and all that changed.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
I'll end with saying, I think, first of all, 250 years and we're still going. So
Yeah, they'd be like, yeah, we
that's
did
pretty
a
cool.
pretty good job. Yeah.
And our biggest ally is Britain.
Yes, they
I
would
think
probably
they'd
be floored
shocked
Yeah.
by that. So despite the challenges, I would say that they also would be very, very concerned that our branches of government don't feel as equal as they should be, that there might be too much power right now in the hands of the federal government. They were for limited government. So I think they would certainly advocate for getting back to that realm, and absolutely would be, I think, very concerned about the extremes on both sides, both parties. You can disagree, You can advocate, you can be an activist, but at the end of the day, you come together, you compromise, and you pass good policy.
You touched on this sort of already, but what would you think they would think about the revolutionary nature of our politics when I'm talking about, like, people just not talking to the other side and the social media hashtags kind of stuff and, you know, the cable news networks and everything? And what would they think about our political parties and how dominant they still are in our politics, which they weren't back then?
Well, don't you think we're in like a perpetual revolution right now? You know, whether it's the parties or just all this fragmentation that's going on, I don't know. Like, I think this is the place where we get the big warning label. You know, I think it was Madison, I think, who called all of these factions like the mortal disease of public democracy, and they were just amplifying that. They wanted compromise. They didn't want chaos. They wanted change. They didn't want chaos. And what we are ginning up right now is chaos. It's not
I'll agree
progress.
and disagree in part. I think, yes, I agree that we are a country of revolutionaries. It started with revolution. Revolution in the spirit of expanding human dignity, whether it's abolition, whether it's suffrage, all of those things are what we're talking about. What you're concerned about, our internal anxiety, is the separation, the trust factoring. Yeah. Those are the things where if we can't have a philosophical differences without actually wanting to destroy you, you know, that is what we're the ideal of America was, that it is a mix of revolutionary thought. It is a perpetual experiment to improve things, but I should be able to respect your right to have a philosophical difference without seeking to destroy and cancel you.
There was a particular incident, though, with some guy named Aaron Burr, which was quite fatal. I mean, there was periods of violence.
Yes.
There always has been in our nation's history.
Yeah, and we're seeing a significant increase in political violence today. I mean, none of that is new. You know, I think we talk about revolution. I think you're exactly right, but I think it has to be a peaceful one, right? They really put a huge emphasis on debate. You saw them do it while they were sitting here playing around.
Sometimes you can't have peace. I mean, you know, slavery was a good example. We went through the most brutal war internally, a civil war, partly because sometimes violence is necessary, because you can't just have. But having said that, it was still in the spirit of expanding human dignity, and not the type of. But I agree in general.
And I look at it as a family. Families fight, but they come together at the end, and they're unified. And that's what feels concerning right now. Is as a country, I think we aren't unified. We need to fight the common enemy. Right now, the enemy is within. That's what both sort of extremes would say on both sides, and that is not what they would envision as a success.
How about this? What would we want to say to the people of this theoretical country still existing in 250 years from now?
I think what makes our country great are not individual heroes or villains like Burr. What makes it great are our habits, our system, and our structure. And that's where President Adams, the separation of powers, that's the plumbing and the wiring, not just the soaring ideals, but the sobering mechanism of how to create a democracy. No experiment like this exists in the world. Others have copied it, India and others, but there's nothing like the American experiment.
By the way, the year is 2276.
Oh my goodness.
250 years from now.
We're here. We're still here.
The spirit of civic engagement is the thing that we pass on. I think, you know, yes, we are fractionalized. We are, you know, we are in factions, but like the spirit of civic engagement exists right now, and I think that's the thing that they would, you know, that our founding fathers would be proud of. I think the advice to your question is avoid the extremes of factionalism, and compromise is not a weakness.
And that the Constitution, the word we haven't come up with, lives, and the Constitution. Still will in, what's it, 2276?
I'm getting a Siri appointment.
It is, and AJ, I agree with you. It is incredible what this country has achieved, and I think they would be shocked. You know, a phone or a Waymo or manufacturing or AI, of all things.
Yeah. How about you, Rich?
George Washington warned in his farewell address about these factions, right? Like, and that's deeply where we are right now. What I would say to future America is, let's get out of our corners, right? Like the tribalism, all of those things. We're Americans first. It's not America first. It's Americans first. And if we remember that, we're going to be fine.
You touched on some of the innovations. Now, what do you think those two guys that were sitting here would have thought about computing, artificial intelligence, space flight, robotic manufacturing
I wanted you to ask Jefferson about this. Like, he wanted libraries, right? We gave him AI and the internet.
You got it, buddy. You got it.
I think Jefferson, who studied fossils, etc., would be fascinated. Would love to, with his quill, talk to Elon Musk and others. Adams would be concerned about concentration of power. He was always suspicious of that. He would ask questions like, who's going to be accountable for having large language models where you have the most absolute extreme concentration of information, flow of information. He would be concerned about separation of powers, the equivalent of it for the AI revolution, whereas Jefferson would be inspired by the,
But isn't it the same now? That's where
Yes.
everything you're saying and that we're saying, it still exists 250 years later and 250 years in the future.
Yeah.
How about this? So, I mean, we had two founding fathers here. Name a bunch more: George Washington, Ben Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, John Hancock, James Madison, Samuel Adams. These were all people involved in creating our nation, all living at the same time, putting their heads together. How did we get so lucky to have people of this character all together at the same time?
I think back then, people, farmers
smarter?
and others,
Right.
it's not the brain as much as what they exercised. They were much more. They had a lot more wisdom. They read more. They even look at the correspondence between average people between then. We just don't have that same level of depth and curiosity. You can have the same brain if you're not exercising it. You're not going to accomplish
It's
much.
immediate gratification, whereas years ago, not even 250 years ago, we sent a letter. We waited for the response. We picked up the phone and dialed a number that we actually knew or memorized. Today, doesn't exist.
Not
We'd be
being
shocked
impulsive
and-
is
yeah,
a problem?
It's a huge problem.
Yeah,
It's
but we have also
act
some of those
before
great
thinking.
people today. It's just that, you know, we look, America, there's never a shortage of the most brilliant, most innovative people. We had it then, we'll have it now, we'll have it 250 years from now.
just
I
hope
want to
we can look
acknowledge
each
the
other in the eye.
the wisdom and the proper deference to our founding fathers, but also would be remiss if I didn't mention that there were no women.
Yes.
And there were no people.
They were all backed by strong women, though.
Correct.
Per
Correct.
Washington, you know, being a
There's
perfect
so much,
example.
yes.
Yeah, Abigail.
But there was no diversity present during this time, and so I think one of the really beautiful pictures that we're trying to tell right now in 2026, and I've been on the America 250 PA Commission for 7 years. We've been trying to get everyone in this Commonwealth to see that they are part of the story now and what the story might look like for the next 250 years. And so, you know, I just want to make sure that we're not.
Sure. Real quick, what would have been different if women were involved in the creation of this document?
Well, we didn't have this research then, but now we know. We know that of the 16 major leadership characteristics, women are naturally better at 14 out of 16 of them. So probably more compromise. Probably more strategic thinking. Like, this is all. This
are
is all
problems
documented.
we have.
You
Disagreeing.
can go to Zenger-Folkman 2011. This is real research. But I think there's more compromise. I think there's more emotional intelligence. I think that some of the definitions of what we created then would be much broader than
And
they
they're
are
better
now.
at remembering a list of 14 items.
Yeah,
Just
I'm like,
saying.
of course, all of us are thinking,
And
what
I
are the
would
two?
be keeping score, Rich.
What are the two? That's what I want to know.
Advertisers advertise mostly to women. That's the
They're
unknown
making the
secret,
decisions.
because you make all the decisions
Yeah.
in the house. So I'll be the first to admit
Yeah.
that.
So wait, we've established that I'm cool and I get to make all the decisions.
And that you're smarter.
This is on film.
Happy birthday, America.
Happy
birthday,
we have like
America.
30 seconds. Yes, let's go to the break. I didn't get to ask this of our former presidents, living presidents now, but what do you think they would have thought of Philadelphia sports fans?
Well, I look up to Rich because he's taller. George Washington will look up to Wemby because Wemby's taller. So I think he'll be amazed at our sports
Anyone?
athletes.
I would think they would be absolutely impressed with our level of being together and the fandom, being great sports activists.
Can you imagine when they called the Citizens Bank Park like 4 hours of hell? You remember when the opposing team said that? Can you imagine if we had Philly sports fans outside Independence Hall?
That's Inside Story for this week. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. I'll see you Monday.